Joining us now in the Arutz Sheva studio in Jerusalem is Oded Revivi, Mayor of Efrat. Shalom.
Shalom, and B'sha'ah Tovah, as we say in Hebrew. I hope you'll only spread from here good news.
We're happy to have you here. You know, in Judea and Samaria, throughout Israel, there was lots of concern before the elections in the United States, or the day after today. What do you think we're going to see in terms of the Biden administration's policy towards Israel, and of course towards what goes on in Judea and Samaria, building, living, maybe even they'll demand some sort of uprooting? What do you think we're going to see?
I don't think we'll get as far as uprooting. I think that is something that has been proven in the past to not be successful, productive, and I don't think those scenarios or those fears are the ones we need to fear from. Regarding the policy of the new administration, it is still early to say. I think they have not actually quite decided where do they want to go. They're bothered like the rest of the world with COVID-19. We see the pictures from Texas with the snowstorm. So we understand that they've got internal issues which are more burning than dealing with the international policy.
But we see the statements, two-state solution, regarding the Golan, it's not really Israel's, etc.
So what I wanted to add on about their statements about international policy, that is also not yet being determined. What I think we are seeing at the moment and what we're hearing is more the discussion going within the Democratic Party, trying to structure where do they want to go, trying to make sure that they are not losing the support of the extremists in the party, but understanding also the complexity in the reality.
So what should Israel do now? What should the right do now? What should the representatives of Judea and Samaria do now? Build and build until someone says, wait a second?
No, I think the question, if I was in your seat, I would have asked the question slightly different. I would have asked, what would we have done differently in the last 4 years?
That's my second question. Did we miss an opportunity?
No, what would we have done differently in the last 4 years to prepare to an option that there's going to be a change of government? And I think
that brings us to the bipartisan issue.
And I think that maybe too many of us were focusing on the fact that we have a Republican administration and ignoring the other side. We definitely missed a lot of opportunities, but we also weren't sensible enough, some of us, to keep on the dialogue with the Democrats. I was one of those that tried throughout the last 4 years to keep on discussions with both parties, and it's actually proven to be a worthwhile investment, because I can tell you that some of the candidates, the final candidates running for the office of the American ambassador to Israel, have been in touch with me already, asked me different questions, maybe even tried to use me to convey messages to the Israeli government. But you see that dialogue needs to carry on. We need to say what's important for us. They need to say what is the framework that they can actually maneuver or act in. And I think then when they will actually come with their vision for their policy for the next 4 years, then we'll be more sensible as to where we're going.
Regarding the next ambassador, who's it going to be? Who do you know? What do you know?
I don't know. I know that there are 3 final people who are considered to be the finalists. What I understand is that it is not by incident that they haven't yet declared who is going to be the next ambassador. In a way, they want to determine their policy in a small circle of people, not needing to coordinate it with a faraway ambassador to make sure that he's talking online, that he's aware of what's decided, and then when they decide their policy, they'll go forward.
So you mentioned that Israel and the right should have, made sure that the Democrats still stay connected, and that's one issue. But was there also a missed opportunity in terms of the Trump administration, what Israel could have done, maybe even sovereignty?
I think, when always you look at the past, you think that if we would have played the cards differently, we could have done things differently. I was one of those who was supportive of the deal of the century. I thought that was an opportunity. There were people who decided to go against it. And once they went against it, the consensus that the Prime Minister was hoping to have, at least within the right, in going forward with that plan, he lost interest in it, and it went off the table.
We were there together in Washington, and at the beginning there was really a celebrative feeling. What happened? Why? Even on the plane, Netanyahu was like, I don't know what's going to be. What happened there? Why are we here and there's still no sovereignty?
Different things happened. Different people have different reviews of what happened. Israel, like any instance, Israel has their interests and the Americans have their interests. When the interests go alongside the other, it is straightforward. When the interests don't go as parallel, you see the friction. Israel was eager, at least the prime minister was eager to move forward with the deal of the century because he looked at the clock. He knew when were going to be the elections in Israel. He knew when were going to be the elections in the United States. He wanted to get things done before those dates. The American administration knew the timetable, but in their interest, and they, by the way, they said it on the table when we met them, the senior representatives of the American administration. They said, you have to understand, what is happening here is an American interest. We are so much invested in it because it's serving an American interest. They, you know what, they even warned us, some of us, don't be an obstacle and stand in the way because you're going to disturb an American interest. And obviously, when you have an Israeli interest and you have an American interest, when you speak to Americans, the American interest is stronger. The American interest was to strengthen the relationship with the Gulf states because of the potential of the economics that it would have had to the American market, and that was their number one goal. For Israel, for Prime Minister Netanyahu, the number one goal was slightly different. And by the way, I think both Netanyahu and President Trump, when they understood that the deal of the century was going to go forward, they shifted the attention, and Israel cooperated with the American interest in signing all those normalization agreements, which were also part of the deal.
So you sound optimistic.
I think 53 years after we've come back to Judea and Samaria, there are facts on the ground which are creating a reality. And you see that the Arab countries are starting to understand that instead of arguing with the reality, let's try and improve it into a better reality.
Okay, Oded Revivi, Mayor of Efrat, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.